I'm Heather. I'm a second-year grad student at UC Davis in Andrew Wetzel's group, and today I'm going to talk to you about patterns and sources of metal enrichment in Milky Way mass galaxies. So for this project, I used fire simulations, which, as many of you know, are cosmological zoom-in simulations of galaxies that include star particles, gas cells, and dark matter. And the simulations have self-consistent gas accretion, star formation, and metal enrichment. And I'm going to play for you the beginning of a movie where we have redshift counting down to 0 as a galaxy forms. And you can see as this galaxy is forming that there are a lot of mergers and then bursts of star formation that cause supernova that eject materials from the main galaxy, and that'll be important later. So fire tracks 3 channels of metal ejection into the ISM, white dwarf supernova, core collapse supernova, and stellar winds. And I'm going to show you the fractional mass loss rates for these 3 channels, but first I'm going to introduce the axes. So we have age on the x-axis and fractional mass loss on the y-axis. And as you can see, we have winds that are present for the entire lifetime of the star. And then we have core collapse supernova turning on after about 3 million years and turning off after about 37 million years. And white dwarf supernova turning on right after the core collapse supernova turned off and following the power law. So generally, when you run a simulation, you have to choose one set of these fractional mass loss rates, which has a couple of limitations. First, we can't easily explore variations in models. Some of these models have a lot of uncertainty. And this way? Okay, thank you. Generally, you have to choose one set of models, and this has a couple of limitations. First of all, there's a lot of uncertainties in some of these models, and we can't easily explore those without rerunning a simulation, which is very computationally expensive. And we also can't tell for a given star in simulation what proportion of the metals come from each channel. But Fire actually has a module called the element tracer module that allows us to circumvent these limitations, and I'll explain how in a minute. So the element tracers work by recording all potential enrichment events. So when a star particle comes close to a gas cell, it may enrich that gas cell with metals. And when this happens, we record 2 pieces of information about this potential enrichment event. We record the mass fraction of metals possibly deposited and the age of the contributing star particle. And then if that gas cell later collapses down into a star particle, then that information is stored for every single possible enrichment event. So then once the simulation has run down to redshift 0, we can use that stored information and combine it with the fractional mass loss rates that I was just talking about and elemental yields to recover the mass fraction of metals in a star that would have been present given this fractional mass loss model. And this has a couple of benefits. First of all, at this point, we can use any set of fractional mass loss rate models, allowing us to explore variations in the models without having to rerun the simulation. And also, since we can input any model at this point, we can input individual channel models in order to recover the proportion of metals present in each star from each channel. So then, as I've described, the module has allowed us to circumvent these limitations, with some caveats, the biggest one being that we cannot model progenitor metallicity dependence with the element tracers. And I just want to note that the results I'm about to show you are tabulated using a single set of mass loss rate models, even though the element tracers, you can switch them out. That's going to be for my future work. So just to motivate my work a little bit, my goals in this project are to understand patterns and sources of metal enrichment in the Milky Way, specifically to answer the question, what percentage of the metals in stars today come from each nucleosynthesis channel, and does this change with time? And I'm going to answer this question first, and then move on for the second part of my talk to testing some assumptions of analytic and semi-analytic models, including the closed box model. So this is the usual view you get of metallicity over time in a simulation. So we have at time on the x-axis and iron over hydrogen metallicity on the y-axis. And these 4 lines represent 4 different simulations that were run using the element tracers. And the shading is the 1 sigma scatter. And as you can see, the metallicity is increasing over time as stars form and eject metals into the ISM and new stars form out of this gas, increasing the metallicity of the stars. But from this plot, you can't tell, again, for a given star particle, what proportion of the metals came from each channel. So the element tracers do allow us to look at the fractional enrichment from each channel, which I'm about to show you. So we have star age on the x-axis and fractional enrichment from white dwarf supernova on the y-axis, and this will be for iron. So here again, the 4 lines represent 4 different galaxies, and you can see that in general, the fractional enrichment from white dwarf supernova increases over time as more white dwarf supernova occur. And there's also a lot of bumps and wiggles and time dependence to these values because of the mergers and bursts of star formation that I was talking about earlier with the video. And that brings us to the second part of my talk, which is answering the question, out to what radius in a galaxy is a closed box model accurate, and does this change with time? So for this part of the talk, I'm just going to focus on one galaxy, M12I, and I'm also going to have a value called metal retention fraction that'll be on the y-axis of the plots I'm going to show you, but I'm going to explain how I calculated that value first. So if we have a galaxy, M12I, with full of star particles and gas cells, what I did was draw a sphere around the center of the galaxy up to some radius, and then compute a ratio using only the star particles and gas cells within that radius. So the ratio is the total amount of metal stored in the gas and star particles, which we can know because the simulations store this information. And and divide that by the metals produced by the star particles within that radius. So now we have a plot where we have radius on the x-axis and this value that I've just described on the y-axis. And it looks like this. So it's not monotonic. It decreases in the beginning. We think that's because of metals moving inward in the galaxy. And at very large radii, the ratio goes to 1, because of course if you go to an arbitrarily large radius, all the metals that were produced in the galaxy will be stored in there somewhere. And you can also see that if we go out to about 20 kpc, about a little over 75% of the metals are retained, and if you go out to 300 kpc, about 80% of the metals are retained, meaning that beyond 300 kpc, about 20% of the metals, or about 20% of the metals are ejected beyond 300 kpc. We can also split this result into looking at different channels using the element tracers. So this plot is very similar to the last one we looked at, except now this is for all metals instead of just iron. And then if we split this into channels, you can see that the metals ejected by core collapse supernova are retained the least out of all the channels. And that's because, we think that's because core collapse supernova occur very close together in time, and so a lot of them tend to go off at once and eject metals beyond the edge of the galaxy. We can also look at these results for different look-back times. So on this plot, we have the same axes, but now this black line is, at the top, is the line we've been looking at, the plot that we've been looking at, and these blue lines are going back in look-back time. So this first thing you might notice about this plot is that the ratio drastically decreases with look-back time, and that's because there were larger outflows when the galaxy was younger. So to summarize, to answer my first question, about 55% of the iron in young stars comes from white dwarf supernova, but there's a strong age dependence to this value, and I'll answer this question for more elements in my upcoming paper. And to answer the second question, for M12I, 75% of the metals are retained within 20 kpc and 80% are retained within 300 kpc, but there's also a strong age dependence to this because of increased outflows at greater look-back times. So for my future work, I'm going to play around with switching out the models, the mass loss models that we used here, and comparing our results with Milky Way survey data to try and find the models that best reproduce Milky Way trends. Thank you.
Questions?
This is very nice work, Heather. I just want to mention that there's lots of other things that you can look at. Maybe you've already thought. You want to look at the evolution of the metallicity, both Fe over H and alpha over H, and look at that also at different locations in the galaxy. See how important stellar migration is. Also, look at the sources and time evolution of the metals at various different distances, both within the halo and beyond the halo, because you're following that. Because those are directly observable, not, of course, so easily for the Milky Way, but for lots of external galaxies using quasar absorption line diagnostics. So, great stuff. It's good to know that this capability was made available with FIRE, and it'll be interesting. A question. To what extent are you actually reproducing the Fe over H observations of the Milky Way? We know the metallicity growth. Basically, the story is that it starts out the thick disk is mostly alpha enriched. The thin disk, much more metal, iron enriched. Presumably that's because of the delay time of the type 1a supernovae. But that would be something that the first thing to do is to check that information to see how well you're reproducing the Milky Way before you look at all the details.
Mm-hmm. Have you done that? I haven't done that yet. That'll be future work. Thank you.
We'll talk about that very topic.
Okay. There are more questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for the great talk, Heather. I was curious because all the results you showed were for M12I, I think, especially in terms, I was very interested in the radial plot of what amount of metals are retained by the galaxy as a function of radius. I was wondering if this is universal, if you've looked at other galaxies in the FIRE suites, or if there's a lot of variance between them.
Yeah, so I have looked at the results, the same plots for other galaxies, and I've looked at it for M12F and M12M, and for M12F the plot looks very similar. For M12M it actually looks a bit different. The ratio is actually above 1 at the beginning, because again, metals moving inward, and also because M12M is more massive and so retains its metals better.
Okay. Are there any questions? A very quick one.
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful work. I was curious if you thought about trying to predict or look at metallicity gradients within the Milky Way disk and as a function of redshift to see how that evolves. And other galaxies, yeah. So.
Yeah, I think Andrew's going to talk about that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So I guess that we can move to Andrew. Let's thank Heather again.